Aston Villa are cooking again.
At the penalty box, it's got it! It's got it! It's got it!
They are back to being an elite team in the Premier League.
Watkins with a chance! It's 2-2!
And Unai Emery has been around the block and he's a fantastic manager.
Every week they're unstoppable, scoring past everyone for fun. Even when Villa play badly, they still find a way to win.
A little bit of consistency, a few wins, and you do fly up that league quite quickly because everybody's dropping points.
It almost makes you forget that in the beginning of the season, these guys were at the bottom of the table.
Villa have just played the worst 10 minutes in their 150-year history.
But there are signs, worrying signs, if you're a Villa fan. The drop-off from what happened last season, last day of the Champions League, flying high.
It's not only tactically as well as individually. And sometimes we are on the field lazy. I don't know why.
Unai Emery has been the manager at Aston Villa for 3 years. And in football, that's a long time. Managers don't often last this long because football moves fast. Tactics, systems, and even the way clubs are ran is always changing.
Well, it's the first little problem he's had. Everything's gone so swimmingly well since he's gone in there. And you could argue that nearly every player he's managed in his tenure has improved under him because of his coaching.
To stay competitive, you have to adapt. And in the summer, it was obvious that Villa needed to tweak their style. With a tough transfer window where rivals improved and Villa didn't, Unai Emery had to find a new way to keep his team dangerous. That meant making the system less predictable and trying to evolve on the pitch. Yet Villa's start to the season was very poor. No wins in the first 5 games and struggling to score goals.
The biggest concern looking at the numbers for me with Villa is from an attacking point of view, they've been nowhere near it.
Villa's squad is one of the oldest in the Premier League, averaging 28 and a half years. Modern football demands younger, faster, more energetic squads, and Villa will eventually have to move players on and bring in fresh blood. Emery has mostly worked with the players he inherited. 9 of the 11 players that started in the goalless draw versus Everton were players that had been at the club before October of 2022. So sooner or later, they're gonna need to actually rebuild. Like many of these players, played under Gerrard. The challenge though is that Emery has always focused on winning now. He likes proven players, even if they're older. The recruitment team may suggest younger talents, but if Emery doesn't trust them, he rarely buys in. Sometimes he's flexible, like when Villa signed John Duran, but more often he leans on experience. That mindset has to shift if Villa are to remain competitive in the long run. He's an excellent coach who gets the best out of his players, but even the best managers eventually need a refresh. That's exactly why Monchi was let go by Aston Villa. His role as the president of football operations had been under the microscope for weeks after a messy summer transfer window and then a rough start to the season. Players had already left training and only found out when the story broke. Even people high up at the club were caught off guard, though most of them agreed that recruitment hadn't gone well and tensions were rising. Depending on who you ask, Monchi's exit was either necessary, mutual, or down to personal reasons. But one thing that everyone can agree on is Villa's summer was chaotic. Financial rules set by UEFA made spending tricky. They had to get their wage bill down and watch their losses. Because of that, they struggled to land their main targets. For example, Villa thought Emi Martinez was leaving, but then the guy pulled the Jordan Belfort from Wolf of Wall Street scene. With Martinez's move collapsing late, Villa couldn't bring in their target, which was Mark Flecken from Brentford. Instead, he joined Leverkusen. That situation kinda summed up their whole transfer window. They needed new signings because the squad felt stale. Selling someone like Jacob Ramsey, who was a local favorite, didn't really help the morale either, even though the sale was necessary for financial reasons. Some might argue that the issues all began when they missed out on Champions League football on the last day of the 2025 season. But you could also argue that many of the problems existed before.
I mean, what's changed? I mean, sold Jacob Ramsey. That can't be the change. They had a problem with a goalkeeper that was playing hide and seek with himself, and they've now got him back, right?
Well, they haven't...
What's changed? The manager's got to get a grip of it. It's the manager's responsibility.
Now, though, Emery has fixed a lot of those issues. The team is playing great football and getting results. Week after week, they keep winning.
Plenty in the area here. What's the ball going to be like? It instead finds Camera, who decides to shoot and score!
Even during the low points, the dressing room still supported Spanish Severus Snape. Most Villa fans always had faith in him too, even when the team was at the bottom of the table, because that's exactly where they were when Emery first took over.
Aston Villa have sacked Steven Gerrard.
Aston Villa sacked Steven Gerrard late last night.
Whoever gets that job at Aston Villa, it's a tough job at the moment to sort of...
Unai Emery is back in the Premier League. Aston Villa moved swiftly last night to appoint the former Arsenal manager to replace Steven Gerrard.
The job that man has done, he's a proper coach.
And he's got such an outstanding CV, obviously, but he's a brilliant coach.
Thank you so much. I am so happy to be here and to share with you this new project.
17th in the Premier League and a point above the relegation zone. That's the position Aston Villa were in when Unai Emery was appointed head coach in October of 2022. Villa had just been thumped 3-0 by Fulham, and the manager at the time, Steven Gerrard, was booed at the final whistle. Nassef Sawiris and Wes Edens had spent about £400 million on the squad since purchasing the club in 2018, hoping to end their near 30-year trophy drought. Yet they found themselves with 12 points from 12 matches. So how have the Claret and Blue gone from being almost relegated to getting Champions League football? To understand just how incredible Aston Villa's rise under Emery has been, I have to show you how low the club had fallen. You see, despite being one of the oldest and most successful clubs in English football, Aston Villa has been pretty inconsistent in the Premier League. Under Martin O'Neill, they got 3 consecutive 6th place finishes, but the sale of Gareth Barry, James Milner, and Ashley Young stopped the team from improving. They were 9th in the 2011 season, then found themselves finishing 16th the season after. From 2012 to 2015, they were fighting for their lives just to stay in the Premier League. You can only battle relegation for so long though, as Aston Villa were relegated in 2016 after winning just 3 games out of a possible 38. Just 3 games. Not many people know about Aston Villa's trophy cabinet. Aston Villa is a club that has 7 league titles, 7 FA Cups, and one of the few English clubs to lift the European Cup. Yet in the Premier League, they were just another club that failed to stay at the top. The start of that 2015-2016 season was very similar to Gerrard's start in the 2022-2023 season, with manager Tim Sherwood being fired after 6 consecutive league losses. In November of 2015, French manager Rémi Gard was hired to change the course of Aston Villa's season, but he ended up leaving in March with the club still at the bottom of the table.
I feel very sorry for the Aston Villa fan, to be fair, because I know that they are always behind us if we are fighting, and today we didn't really fight on many occasions.
Gerrard was sacked early in the season in 2022, similar to Sherwood, but the new owners were smarter. The appointment of Unai Emery has been a far better decision than the appointment of Rémi Gard.
Oh, when Rémi Gard come in, oh my God. And I don't like slaughtering managers, and we've spoken about this before, but he was
Aston Villa's first season in the Championship in 2017 was disappointing. Newly appointed manager Roberto Di Matteo was sacked after 12 games with the club as they were in 19th place with only 1 match won against Rotherham. Steve Bruce replaced the Italian but could only lead the club to a 13th place finish. The 2017-2018 season started out poorly for Aston Villa, with the club winning just 1 of their first 7 games. Later in the season, under coach Steve Bruce, they actually did better, winning 24 of their next 46 matches. This good run helped them finish 4th and make it to the playoffs. However, they lost the final match against Fulham and did not move up from the Championship. We fast forward to 2019 now, and Aston Villa are still in the Championship. The club was in complete ruins compared to the former glory they had seen. For the people that don't know, Aston Villa was owned by a Chinese businessman in 2019. Following the playoff final, financial problems began for Chinese business owner Tony Xia. Tony struggled to move money out of China to maintain basic footballing operation. Like, they couldn't even pay the salaries of the players and the staff. What a weird situation to be in as a football club. Facing significant financial difficulty and the threat of the club even existing, Tony sold 55% stake of the team to Nassef Sawiris and Wes Edens. The duo promised significant investment and made immediate changes. They sacked Steve Bruce with Villa sitting 12th in the table after 11 games and appointed Dean Smith. Under Dean Smith, the team improved dramatically and went on a 12-game unbeaten streak. By the end of the season, they had finished 5th in the Championship, qualified for the playoffs, and played in the finals once again. However, this time around, it was a positive result as they won the game 2-1 and got an exciting promotion back to the Premier League. Tammy Abraham, one of the players who the new owners brought in on loan from Chelsea, was phenomenal that season, scoring 25 goals in the Championship. With the club back in the Premier League, Nassef Sawiris and Wes Edens began to invest even more. After all, their previous investments in Tammy Abraham, Tyrone Mings, and El Ghazi had turned out well. well. In the 2020 season, Aston Villa made 15 signings, which included Mings and El Ghazi to permanent contracts, alongside Trezeguet, Matt Targett, and Douglas Luiz. With so much money spent, it was expected that the club would remain in the English top flight easily, but they couldn't have been more wrong. Villa started the season in 17th place and ended it in the same spot. They won just 9 games and were only 1 point away from the relegation on the last match day with a 1-1 draw against West Ham. They also lost the EFL Cup final 2-1 to Manchester City. The one shining light was the emergence of Jack Grealish, who was their top scorer and assister with 8 goals and 6 assists. But it was understood that signing big players wasn't going to be enough. They had to sign the right players and adapt their plan. In the next season, Aston Villa spent another £100 million on new signing, acquiring Emiliano Martinez for £17 million, Ollie Watkins for £34 million, and Matty Cash for £15 million. These investments paid off as they won 4 of their first 5 games, including a memorable 7-2 victory against Liverpool. New signing Ollie Watkins netted 14 goals that season, with Jack Grealish contributing 6 goals and 12 assists in another standout season. Right winger El Ghazi also impressed by scoring 10 goals. These performances propelled Aston Villa to their highest ever Premier League finish in the last 11 years. The team appeared ready to compete for a top 10 finish, with Grealish proving to be one of the league's most standout players. However, the 2021-2022 season brought new challenges as Grealish moved to Manchester City in a record-breaking transfer for a British player. Losing their homegrown talented player, a star in the making, was the type of things that Aston Villa was used to going through back in 2011. But unlike back then, Aston Villa actually reinvested their money into new players, guys like Danny Ings and Leon Bailey. Despite the spending though, the team struggled, losing 7 of their first 11 games, which led to manager Dean Smith being replaced by Steven Gerrard.
Dean Smith has gone from Aston Villa.
Gerrard, a legendary midfielder with a successful coaching stint at Rangers, arrived with high expectations. His initial start was positive, with Aston Villa winning 4 of their next 7 games as they moved up to 11th place by the end of 2021. Seeing this progress, Gerrard was backed in the January transfer window, as Villa signed Coutinho on loan from Barcelona and Digne for £25 million from Everton. But the results in the new year were poor. Aston Villa lost 4 games in a row to West Ham, Arsenal, Wolves, and Tottenham. When Gerrard had taken charge of the team, they were in 15th place, and he helped them finish, 14th. Hardly the progress the owners wanted to see. The 2022-2023 season saw more troubles, even though Gerrard had gotten the players that he wanted. The team underperformed, struggling with both wins and goals, managing just 2 wins and 7 goals in the first 11 games. After an embarrassing 3-0 loss and finding themselves in 16th place, Gerrard was sacked.
Aston Villa have sacked Steven Gerrard.
He was replaced by Unai Emery, a highly sought after coach at the time with 4 Europa League titles to his name. Emery quickly turned things around with the same initial crop of players. He won his first match in charge 3-1 against Manchester United, which was actually Villa's first home Premier League victory against United since August 1995. Emery's Villa would go on to win 15 of their next 25 league games, earning 49 points from a possible 75. Emery won the Premier League Manager of the Month for April, and a month later secured a 7th place finish for Villa after a 2-1 win over Brighton. Aston Villa had achieved European qualification for the first time since 2010. Due to his success, Emery was backed in the transfer market. But unlike his predecessor, the Spaniard made strategic signings, including Pau Torres from his former club Villarreal for £33 million and Moussa Diaby from Bayer Leverkusen for £35 million. These new players helped Aston Villa start strongly. The team won 12 of their subsequent matches after an initial loss to Newcastle, and even dominated Manchester City in a 1-0 win. Villa had 22 shots against City, the most any team has managed against Pep Guardiola. Emery's tactical approach, a versatile 4-4-2 formation focused on midfield creativity and dynamic forward runs, with striker Ollie Watkins playing a crucial role. His tactics not only involved a high defensive line, but also meticulous man-to-man marking, allowing the team to control games and create scoring opportunities.
Coached them to play a high line, like a lot of the teams these days. They squeeze the game, they're powerful, they pass the ball.
Emery won 31 of his first 50 games in charge, which is 2 more than what Pep Guardiola managed in his first 50 games in charge of Manchester City. Under Emery, Aston Villa had one of the best attacks in the league, and their performances showed that they deserved Champions League football. In the 2024-2025 season, they were competing under the bright lights of the Champions League. They showed that not only were they able to compete with Europe's biggest teams, but that they belonged. They beat Bayern Munich, they pushed PSG further than any other Premier League team was able to.
Especially when you watch them in Europe run people, the only team to beat PSG in the latter stages was Asensio and Rashford.
They finally look like that team again. Emi Martinez is making so many saves, you forget that he left the club at one point. Ollie Watkins has found his goal-scoring boots again. Morgan Rogers is showing why Tuchel prefers him to Jude Bellingham for England. Malin is looking like a beast. The back line is solid again, but of course, more than anyone, Unai Emery deserves appreciation. He's not someone who only knows one system, Ruben Amorim. He has years of experience, countless ideas, and a level of tactical detail that basically no one else has. He doesn't need a big personality to get people to buy in. His football knowledge speaks for itself. The win against Wolves showed it again. Villa didn't play well, they were slow, they needed luck, Martinez saved them multiple times, and the goal came from yet another long-range rocket. But even when their expected goals is low, they keep finding ways to win. Defensively, they've massively improved. They've conceded only half the league goals they did at this stage last season. Villa Park has become a fortress. In the long run, this squad will need to evolve. They're older and they can't rely on the same players forever. But if there's any coach who can guide them through a rebuild, it's Unai Emery.